little college basketball. Of course, a lot of the Vols fans have kind of shifted their focus there over to basketball, and it's been a really interesting run here, and another big game here on deck. I was joking with Patrick about the Tennessee's love to play a lot of teams with orange. You had Syracuse matching up in both football and basketball, and then the same thing now with Illinois with the bowl game just around the corner. But let's talk some hoops first, Sam. Another loss here, 3 straight. I know Illinois is very, very good. Alabama played them earlier this year. 75-62 the final score. What'd you make of that performance there in Nash Vegas?
Yeah, the Vol fans were looking for some hope when they turned to basketball. And typically, a lot of people aren't watching college basketball till, January at the earliest. But they're like, all right, we don't have a whole lot to be hopeful for with the football team missing out on the playoff. And so we're going to turn our focus to basketball because we just watched this basketball team go and beat one of the best teams in the country in Houston over in Vegas. And then when all the eyes turn to basketball, then it seems like things just go downhill from there because, like you said, 3 straight losses in this latest one in Nashville. From start to finish, you're watching and you're like, wait, this is the team that just went and, beat that incredible Houston squad with, all these 4-star, 5-star players over there, and they just didn't look like that Final Four caliber team that we thought we saw a couple of weeks ago. So that was certainly not the case. They're doing all the things, I think they led Illinois 25-11 in rebounds at the half. So when you see stuff like that, you're like, man, like this should not be a close ball game. But it was Tennessee who was trailing the entirety of the first half. They took the lead going into the break, but you could just tell, like, man, a couple things trend in the wrong direction, and Illinois could run away with it, and they almost did in the second half when their three-point shooters got going. Their big men inside, they're certainly handling the very deep front court that Tennessee has, and Nate Ament, everybody's saying, where's that freshman of the year finalist? Where's that guy that we expected to come out and just be an absolute world beater? Started off the year and it was the freshman of the week in the SEC over and over and over again. But the last couple weeks and those 3 losses, everybody's going, where's Nate? And he's very young. Give him time. But right now, that's the question right now. It's, whoa, what happened to this blue chip recruit that we thought was going to be, the greatest player to ever wear orange coming a couple weeks ago?
I think if you told Vol fans a couple weeks ago before the Players era that Tennessee would go 2-1, they would be like, okay, that's pretty reasonable. Get a nice win over maybe a Houston and got a nice win over Rutgers. But it was a close game against Kansas, and then going up to upstate New York and central New York, be like, okay, the football team just annihilated them in Atlanta earlier this year, and we annihilated them like 40 by 40 points last year in Knoxville. So that should be a get back game. And then Tennessee drops that one, and then they drop another one to Illinois. Do you think the morale is starting to drop a little bit after these 2 losses to teams that on paper they should be better than?
I think certainly there's a dip in morale. They felt like they were, they could beat anybody after that Houston game. And, hey, this is a team of destiny. We're doing things that really special, veteran squad of last year. We're doing things that they couldn't do. And then we're seeing right off the bat, with these last 3 games, it's like, okay, this team needs a lot of growth before that January, February, March basketball. They need a lot of things to start clicking because, you're seeing you can't just rely on Jacoby Gillespie to come in and score 30 points a game and will you to victories with his 3-point shooting. He is an incredible player. He's going to end up being one of the best players in the country. I firmly believe that come toward the tail end of the year. But right now, you can't be reliant on him to do everything. And then when Nate Ament disappears, when teams are keying on him and taking him away and not letting him be that game changer, then who are you going to turn to get a bucket when Jacoby, has 3 fouls and he's sitting on the bench? And then now you're having to turn to, your Ethan Bergs and your guys that are coming in and have been with the program for all of 3 months right now, coming in from overseas and such. And now you're like, okay, maybe this is a team who really needs a lot of growth throughout the year, who should be taking their lumps early in the season and then focus, okay, when it gets to SEC play, we just want to focus on our health and we want to focus on what's working best for us, especially on the defensive side of the court.
Absolutely. I think it was Bill Belichick that once said that you can't learn how to win consistently without learning how to stop doing the things that are making you lose. And so I think this is a kind of a perfect situation with this, because you have a team that, as you said, their last win is against Houston, one of the best teams in college basketball, 3 losses since then. Before we pick your brain on that, let's hear from Coach Rick Barnes talking to his team about winning.
Little details, not listening, coming out of timeouts, not doing what we say we're going to do. Mistake, taking the ball out of bounds when you're not supposed to, free throw blockouts when it's it's still a 9-point game, giving up when you've dominated there, it's finishing plays and free throws. I mean, I think free throws, think about it, we were 8 for 18 from the free throw line, and when you're not shooting it well from the 3, and we're 6 for 20, and it's just little things, details. It takes a lot of that to go into it, and execution and that is coming out of a timeout. Like, anytime we get a rebound and we're going to push and we're going to try to, if we can get something before the defense gets set, we're going to try to do that. But if not, we've talked about what we're going to do, but we don't get to it, and that's a problem that we've got to get fixed.
I used my words intentionally there because I said talking to his team. A lot of times coaches will use the press conference to send a message to their team. I just found it hilarious that right there in that press conference was one of his star players. Do you think this message gets through from Coach Barnes, saying, basically highlighting, looking at the stat sheet and saying, hey, these are the areas where we are just not playing winning basketball? Do you think that goes from the podium, from the microphone, from the guy sitting next to him, all the way to the court in their next game?
I think it has to. I think at some point when you have a coach like Coach Rick Barnes, who's been doing this for forever, and he's like, hey, don't look at me, look at these guys, then you got to say, okay, yeah, the players probably need to start doing that themselves, as far as like, hey, we're being taught what to do. We're being told what we're doing wrong. We're being corrected when we're doing the wrong things. We're saying, hey, that's how you do it when you're doing the right things. So at some point you got to look internally and go, okay, what is it, that when it gets out to the court, we're being told what to do. We know what to do. We're just not doing it. What is it going to take from there? And you got your guys like Bishop Boswell, who is sitting next to him, who night in and night out, they're just, diving on every loose ball. They're putting their all on the court. So, at some point you got to go and, hey, is this the time of year where we got to spend every game like it's our ticket out of the tournament if we lose? You got to figure something out. You got to see what's going on. Why are we turning the ball over in these situations when we shouldn't be turning the ball over? Why are we giving Illinois, 6-7 offensive rebounds in the final 10 minutes of the game? What is it going to have to take for us to correct these things? And like Coach Barnes said, hey, look, we're doing this in practice. We're talking about it in practice. We're correcting things in practice. We're practicing well. So why isn't it happening on the court? And I think at the end of the day, that is going to take some internal, reflection from some of these players and some guys going, hey, if the guy in front of me is not doing it, give me a chance. I'll go out there and do it. I'll seize that opportunity. And come the end of the year, that initial starting 5 could look nothing like it has been for the early portion of the season.
Sam, I know it's early. I know we're only a month into the season, but there's another tough test coming up in Louisville. If the Vols lose that one too, is it time to panic?
I don't think so. I think everything in this early portion of the season is growth. I think because the SEC is so deep, because the SEC is just transitioned into, just an absolute power conference, I think that's what's going to really matter at the end of the day, is how you do in conference play, what you're doing for me in January and on into February. Right now, I think a lot of this is learning, and of course you want to pick up these big wins. You want to be in that conversation from start to finish of the year of, oh yeah, they're a top 15 team, they should be, a top 3-4 seed in the tournament. But I think this is a team that really needs to have their growth. They're going to need to take their lumps. They need to have these games to where they lose and go, okay, we lost by 2 points on the road at a team in Syracuse who probably shouldn't be, in the same conversation with us. Okay, we missed 10 free throws against Illinois, and they beat us by 12 points.
It's the Syracuse effect.
What is happening here? So I don't think you should panic. I don't think panic mode should be until you're 4 or 5 games under 500 in conference play in January and February. But we'll get to that when we get to that. I think you, of course, would love to have a bounce-back game against a top 10 team in Louisville here in Knoxville a week from today. If you don't get it, I don't think it's panic mode yet, but I do think that there needs to be a lot of internal conversations with the players of like, all right, do we want to be this, legendary team that we thought we were capable of being with our 5-star freshmen and then a bunch of, seasoned guards, seasoned guys around us? Is that what we're capable of being? I don't think it's time to panic, but, like I said, come mid-conference season, if things aren't going well, maybe we'll reach for that panic button then.
We aren't at DEFCON 1 yet.
No,
we're at DEFCON 2.
Yeah.
At that point.